My name is Matthew Dale, and today we're going to take a closer look at the first solo in Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd. Now, this is probably one of the most popular guitar solos that we learn as guitar students, and even if you already know it, do you really know what's going on with the music behind it? Stick around for what makes this solo so melodic and so iconic. If you want a clear reference on some of the chord shapes and scale shapes I'm going to be using in this video, go ahead and download my Chords to Scales cheat sheet. This will really help you connect the dots from chord shapes over into pentatonic scale shapes and major scale shapes. Remember, this is a concept video, and while I'm not going to be showing tabs on how to play the solo, I will be discussing techniques and maybe chord shapes and scale shapes that can assist us in learning what's going on behind the notes. All right, so before we dive in, I've said this time and time again, but you should always know what chords you are soloing on top of, whether you are writing your own solo or you're learning other people's solos. You want to have a good understanding of what chords are going on behind the music. So in this song, Comfortably Numb, on this first solo, we have a D chord, and then we have an A chord, and then we repeat, we go back to D, and then we go back to A, and then up to C, to G, C, G, and then A, up to C, G, and then finally D. Now, because this is all major chords, it can be kind of confusing to really get a grasp on what key we're in. But if you're ever asking yourself, okay, what key am I actually in? Really, you just want to find the chord that you would most likely end the song on. So at the end of that phrase, A, C, G, and D is the most resolved chord. That's going to give you what key you are actually in 9 times out of 10. Now, there's a non-diatonic chord in here, which would be the C chord, which can kind of confuse things up a little bit. We would call this chord flat 7. So the key of D is D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and then D. Flat 7 is C natural, because C sharp is the natural 7 in the key of D, and we're going to flat it for a C natural, and we put a major chord on top of that C. Now, it is especially important in this solo to have a good grasp of what the chords are and when they occur, rather than what a lot of us do, and not that there's anything wrong with this, but typically, as improvisers, we often generalize over a chord progression, which means, okay, the song is in the key of D, where is my D major scale or my D major pentatonic scale? And we play licks and phrases within that. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not really what's going on in this solo, and it's not really what makes this solo unique. The big thing that makes this solo unique are the chord tones that David Gilmore uses to make his phrases. So if we just take this first phrase, he kind of rakes up this shape here, and he plays. All of these are triad arpeggio shapes. If I switch over to a clean tone here, I can almost play the phrases of the solo down here in the open chord positions, just using chord shapes. It's the same concept up the guitar neck, exactly 12 frets, right? So it's this D chord shape up here, and then we're going to go to an A chord shape. Now, if we look up this solo on, guitar tabs or whatever, you'll probably find this tabbed something like this. We kind of rake up that shape, and then another bend up on the D note, B string on the 15th fret, and then down this A arpeggio shape. And while that's good and that's correct, you don't want to jump into taking special care of where the notes are quite yet. You can actually play a lot of the phrases of this solo just using this one D chord shape. Let me show you. So if I rake up that first, I'm just going up the D chord shape, and I'm just doing a little bit of a rake here. And then if I just move this D to an A, and then G would be 2 frets behind that. So those frets would be the D chord, think 12 frets up from here. Now, the root of this chord is in the middle of the chord shape on the B string. So whatever note lands on the B string for this chord shape will be the name of the chord. So we have D, E up a whole step, F up a half step, G up a whole step, so remember that one, A up a whole step, that's 9, 10, and 9, B, another whole step, C up a half step, and then D up another whole step. So if I just place this chord shape over the appropriate chord, I get a lot of the solo taken care of. D, A, there's that little A chord shape. Now remember, in the chords of the song, we go back to D, and then again, the same chord shape, and then he follows this phrase up with kind of a scale run. So we go down this A sus shape, and then that could be thought of as being taken from the D major scale. And it's working its way down from the root. So chord shape, and then down from the root, D, C sharp, and then B, A. So that takes care of our first 4 measures. D, A, back to D, and then A. Now he kind of shifts his perspective here. He plays a lot more scalular. In particular, he bends this F sharp up to a G. And the G is important. It's the 5th of our C major chord. So he's bending in to that 5th note. And then playing D, the D major scale, down, back to D. And the D is the 5th of the G chord. He plays a little scale phrase going up. And again, bending back to the G, the 5th of the C chord. And then, again, on this next and final G chord of this phrase, he plays a big arpeggio. I'm going to use the D shape for this again. So I'm starting all the way up on G, F sharp, E, and then there's that D arpeggio shape, extending all the way up to the 5th of the chord. So 5, 1, 3, 5. And I kind of like to play a lot of those notes on the first string, so it gives it kind of a slidey nature. He bends this B up to a C, and then ends his phrase on an A note, which dovetails nicely into the A chord. So again, let's review. We're following the chords here. D chord, A chord. I'm going to use the same shape. You can use other shapes that you want as well. In the intro, I played up here, but same exact notes. You just want to find the shapes that you are most comfortable with. And once you're comfortable with one shape or 2 shapes, move on to other shapes and you'll get to know the fretboard a lot better. So we go back, 2nd D, scale down, bending into G, 5th of the G, back to the 5th of the C, and then big G arpeggio down, and that could be thought of as a little sus chord, so G sus, and then ending on A of the A chord. Now that's most of the bread and butter in the solo, and then at the end phrase, we play this scale line up again. It's very similar to the phrase we had before. We're starting on D, working up the D major scale, and bending into, again, the 5th of C, which is a G note. back down our scale, and then a little twiddle going from this B note, and I'm kind of just sliding into a C and out, and ending on A, which is the 5th of D. Again, this was a lot of talking, so let me go ahead and go through that final phrase. After the G arpeggio, we climb up the scale. That's the 5th of C, 5th of G, 5th of D. Now, a really good visualization exercise might be play these chord shapes and play the melody notes around the chord shapes. Something like this. So I'm all the way up on this D chord, going to this A chord, and then this A shape down here, sus chord, and then down that chord shape, ending on D, back up, A, and then now we're on our C chord, G chord, C, G, that little sus move, and then down into A, right? So it's all coming out of chord shapes, which is one reason why it can be hard for guitar players to visualize where these notes are coming out of the solo when they are very scale-based. When you try to force this solo into a pentatonic box, it can be really hard to visualize what's going on. Having a really good knowledge of chord tones can really do a lot to improve your improvisation and open up all of the areas of the neck. To have a clearer picture of this, go ahead and download my Chords to Scales cheat sheet, and you can see how all of these chord shapes and scale shapes, both pentatonic and major scale, connect together. My name is Matthew Dale. Let me know in the comments below what solos you'd like to take a closer look at. I'll see you on the next one.